Howdy y'all, Fast Force 289, welcome back. In this video, we'll be working on my 1976 Ford truck and we're going to be installing some aftermarket gauges underneath the dash. Now this truck does have a full gauge package from the factory, but I like that look of the gauges underneath the dash. It looks cool, old school, right? It's classic. But also, I'm somebody that likes to actually know what the readings are on my stuff. Like I want to know what temperature my truck is running. Yeah, the needle says good, it's in normal, but what is the temperature on it, right? I want to know what PSI pressure I'm running on the oil pressure, you know? The gauge says it's good, but I want to know what is the PSI actually at. And then I have a voltmeter too, just because I don't like the 2-pod gauges. Usually I have them in my Fairlane, and it's fine, but I usually like the 3-pod better. So I would run a voltmeter, ammeter. Even if I didn't hook it up, I'd still have something there just to make it look complete. But I am going to hook the voltmeter up. So let's take a look at the parts and see what we got. Okay, so this is the 3-pod gauge kit that I've got for my truck here. I got a water temp, obviously, a voltmeter, and an oil pressure gauge. This is the Aquase, or however you pronounce the name brand, but this is the name brand right here. I had to buy these individually. They didn't have this in a kit. You can buy the gauges like this, like the half sweep in a full kit, but not these. So I had to actually go through and order each and every single one of these separately. This is their 7000 series gauge line, and I had to order each individual one, order the bracket individually, and you can't get a black bracket, you only get a chrome. I painted this one brush. So what I like about this brand is I like how they integrate the ground. So you can take all 3 of these grounds, put one connector on them, and hook it into where it's mounted. This way you know you have a guaranteed good ground for the light source. I also like how Aquase or Quest or however you say it, they use this. The old style had like this clamp style that went over the gauge and had like 2 posts sticking out the back, and you put some nuts on it, tighten it down, and it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I like this better, how you just have these plastic like nuts, you know, and you just twist them on here. You just twist them and tighten them down, and it tightens it up. Not to mention that if you look, these also have a centering pin to help you center the gauges properly. So like, if you look on this one, you pull it out of here, right? You have this little notch right here in the bracket, and you also have this notch in the top of the gauge. So that makes it real easy. Like, you don't have to sit here and try to eyeball and guess, like try to line them up. You just, once it's locked in, it's locked in. You take your plastic nut and you put on here, and they screw on real easy. After you flip it around the proper way, just take it, screw it on here. Once you make sure that it's lined up properly, tighten it down, and now it's even. There's no guessing to it. So I really like that, the ease of that. If you got to pull this out for some reason, it's easy to put back up, sit there and try to eyeball it and guess at it. And I like that ease of that. So just real quick, here's the part numbers to everything that I ordered. You can see the top one is your water temp gauge, and that's the part number for it at the top, and then your oil pressure, then voltmeter, and then that the bracket, the triple panel chrome bracket. That's all the part numbers, and this is what it cost. Part numbers again, and that was the total price on that, and then plus shipping and all was like $100, $96 or something like that, with shipping and everything attached. So sitting in the truck, I'm gonna mount my gauges right underneath here. I'm gonna put them right underneath the ashtray here. I'm gonna set them far enough back to where I can still put my hand up under here and pull this out and get to it easily. But I want it mounted right here, and that'll be a nice complete look because I got my CB, I have the gauges, and then on this side over here, I got my brake controller. So it's perfect. It'll be a nice setup. Okay, so what I did is I zip tied these up into place to get them where I wanted them with the ashtray and everything in to make sure that they're good. And then I came underneath and put a self-tapper into it. That's all you need, is just one on each side. And now that's good to go. I can cut these zip ties off and it'll stay in place now. Perfect. I gotta get the lights wired up, and we gotta drill a hole through the firewall to run the temperature sending unit wire, and the oil pressure gauge hose line running out to the engine. I got the gauges mounted up like I showed you a minute ago. Went ahead and got them set in place. I ended up rearranging like this right here. I can see all of them really good like this. So I'm probably just gonna leave them set up like this. So now we gotta crawl underneath the dash, underneath here, and cut a hole for the temperature sensor to go through. The temperature looks like this. That's the one thing I don't like about these kits, is how they give you this big nut. Like, I wish there was a way to remove the nut before drilling the hole and then like reinstall it on the engine bay, because then you wouldn't need but a small hole for what you're working on. But unfortunately, there's no way to do it. So you gotta drill a hole big enough to fit this through to get the entire line through it. So I'm gonna drill a hole and put a grommet in there, and it'll run my temperature sensor and my oil pressure line to that same hole. This is where I'm gonna route it through here. You got these punch outs from the factory, and I'm just gonna utilize this one here. It's the smallest one of the three, and obviously I can drill the hole whatever size I want, but I could punch this out and it'll be the smallest hole. I could drill a hole here and route everything through there. This has a quick little update. So I got all this in. I'm gonna go ahead and hook my lights up. I went ahead and drilled the hole through the firewall and ran my temperature sending unit wire out to the engine bay to get it hooked up, but I'm waiting for the engine to cool. I just got back driving the truck, so it's got to cool down. So while I'm doing that, I'm gonna pull this dash apart. There's a light wire in there I can tap into, put me a spade connector on it, and just plug it into the factory plug. I already went ahead and hooked the ground up for my lights and the ground for this, because this is actually working already. You can see how that's coming on. I came in here and I just pulled the screw out for this and ran me a ground for the lights in here, and then this is the ground for the voltmeter. So they're hidden like that. You don't see them, don't notice them. It's a good ground. And put the ashtray back in, and it's completely hidden. Even with the ashtray open, you don't see it. Close that and you're none the wiser. So I'm gonna get this dash here tore apart. We've got all that hooked up. The plug I ended up using, I meant to show you before I put it back together. I don't know how well you can see it. Actually, ironically enough, I found this after I hooked my lights up. This is also a light wire. I could have just put a bullet connector on the wire and ran it right there, and it's easy, but I didn't see that till after I hooked it up to the radio plug, which is that green plug back there with the blue terminal and the red wire sticking out of it. That green plug is for the radio wire. It's got the power wire for the radio, and then the light wire that went to the original radio. So I just spliced into that with a spade connector. And now if we turn the headlights on, or the dash lights, you see they pop on now. So now it's time to get all this dash put back together. All right, so now we got the dash all put back together. Everything still works good like it's supposed to. Okay, so this is what they give you in this kit with the gauges. It says plastic nylon tube, and I don't like it. It works. I've used it before and it does work, but I don't like it. I like to use the copper line. It's just a peace of mind for me knowing that it's there, it's more solid. You know, if it does touch something hot, it's not going to completely melt and all that, and I just like that better. What I also got in this, and in case you're wondering, there's the part number for it if you want it. I got some of this vacuum line here that I'm gonna put over this line, and it's just to protect it. I don't want with the vibrations in the motor and everything to rub a hole in this over time and then it start leaking. So this will just be like a cover, basically a sheath or whatever, just to cover the line to help protect it from rubbing a hole in it. Okay, so you can see here how I got the hose over the line now. I left me a little bit sticking out just on a couple inches to give me room to put the nut on here and all that, and compression fitting to put it in there and just be able to work with it. I did that on both ends, so now we can put it in the truck. All right, so I'm gonna try to get under here the best I can to show you how to install one of these. You gotta put your compression fitting on in your nut. First the nut goes on, obviously, and then your compression fitting, and this is tapered. you want the tapered side to go toward the gauge and the more flatter side toward the nut. And the reason for that is it'll go on there, it'll go inside that gauge, and then it will compress when you tighten the nut down. So we're gonna do that, slide it back up in here a little bit. You don't have to have the line in all the way until it stops. As long as it's in a good portion, I'd say at least probably a good ½ inch or so is all you really need. And then you start tightening the line down. Put the nut down here. Once it's in there and got started, just tighten this nut down. And since it's all brass stuff, you don't want to kill this, but it does need to be good and snug. Because you want to compress that compression fitting so it'll seal. And that's all there is to it. And then it's just a matter of routing the rest of it the way you want it. So. All right, so now once you got that hooked up to the gauge and you got it running through your hole, now it's a matter of routing it and getting it around. And you may have to trim it. Like, I'm sure I'm gonna have to trim this off because it's just too long. So I'll end up routing it the way I want to, getting it close to where I want it, and then I'll cut it. I'll get my tubing cutter, cut it, and then I can go ahead and splice it together once I get the fitting put on the block. And also, to make it easier for me, I'm gonna remove my power steering pump, just let it hang down to get it out of the way, and my air conditioning compressor. So I went ahead and pulled my old adapter piece off. This is what screws into the block right here, and then your old sending unit screws in here. So what I picked up for my aftermarket gauge is this. It screws into the block like normal. Your sending unit goes in here, but now it's got a port for your oil pressure line to go into for the aftermarket gauge as well. So that's cool. I like that. The aftermarket gauge can go in, keep your factory gauge, and everything works perfectly. It looks factory. I like how this one's aluminum, but I like how this is aluminum better than this is steel. Now, in the 60s and early 70s, I'm not exactly sure when they switched, Ford switched, maybe somewhere in the early 70s they switched and they went to aluminum housings, or maybe it was mid 70s. They went to aluminum ones. They used to be steel back in the old days, and then they went to aluminum. I kind of like the aluminum better, but you know, it is what it is. It don't really matter. The steel is a good quality, good thick brand. I put the Teflon tape on here. It don't come with that. But the brand of this, I ordered it off Amazon. It's ACP brand. See, it's got a D1 part number, which is 71 for a Ford part number. Oil pressure sending unit, dual port extension for V8. So that's the part number if you want that, and the brand, and this is what it looks like. So, and it looks exactly like the original, except the exception of, like I said, one being steel, one being aluminum, and the steel one's just a little bit longer. We're gonna put this in the truck now. So I got this installed now. Put that piece in there. You see how that hooks up. Got the original sending unit put back up. Got the oil line hooked up. Got it routed up just like it's supposed to, right the way I want it. To the firewall. Because I want to keep my factory temperature gauge hooked up, and the sending unit for it is back here, and you know, I don't want to unhook that. I also don't want to try to find a T-fitting for that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come right here and take my vacuum switch off. This ain't even hooked up anyway. I plugged it off a long time ago because it was leaking at the air cleaner, because it's supposed to hook to the air cleaner and open that flapper door for this, but it was leaking, the diaphragm went bad, but I wanted that stock factory look, so it's not even doing anything. So I'm going to take this off, pull it out, and I'll put my temperature switch for the gauge right in here. All right, so we got the old piece out. Now we just got to put the new fitting in. So this is the new fitting here, and the thread is a 3/8 18 NPT. So, and that's National Pipe Thread, in case you're wondering what NPT stands for. So now we need to put some Teflon tape on the threads here, and then put it into that adapter fitting in the heater hose fitting on the intake. I want to show you what I encountered on this. So I put this fitting in here to try to fit this piece in here, and well, it ain't quite deep enough. See, it won't go in and sit flat all the way. I can't start this. Like, it just barely starts the first thread, barely. But it's not grabbing. It's because this is going in too far. This piece is not deep enough. And yeah, I'm not trying to put a bunch of adapters in here to make this work. What I'll probably end up doing is, because I don't want to eliminate my factory gauge, and the factory gauge wire won't reach over here to put the factory thermostat over here. So what I'm going to do for now is put it back the way I had it, because I like that vacuum switch being here anyway. And I will probably end up getting a thermostat housing that has the hole in it for this, because I don't have a national pipe thread tap. I can't really do it myself. So I have to get a thermostat housing that has that hole in the top, and I can come in here and just pop it in there, and it'll be fine. Okay, so I found a solution to my problem with the temperature sending unit. I bought this from O'Reilly's Auto Parts. It's a 302 351 Windsor and Ford 289 thermostat housing. And it's got the fitting in the top, so I can screw my fitting here and put my temperature sending unit in here, and it'll be just fine. If you want the part number for this, it's a Murray brand, and there's the part number for it. It comes with a plug, like if you just need a new housing and you don't want to put anything in here, it comes with a plug to put in the top here if you want to. And it also comes with a new gasket, but does not come with the thermostat. So now they do have a kit. You can buy this plus the thermostat. It costs a little bit more. This here was $15 for this, so not a bad deal really for all that. So, but this will give me what I'm looking for to be able to hook my temperature gauge up underneath the dash. So this is where we're at now. I went ahead and got all this pulled apart and got the thermostat housing pulled off, got my surfaces cleaned up. I got the new thermostat housing all ready to go and setting up. Pro tip on these right here, because these could be a bit of a pain on a Ford 289, 302, 351 Windsor because they go in from the front. You got to make sure the thermostat doesn't fall out. So I RTV my thermostat in, let it sit up and tack up for a minute to hold it. So then when I go to put it in, it doesn't fall out. Same thing with the gasket. Let that sit like 5-10 minutes, tack up. And then that won't fall out when you go to install it. Okay, so we're done. I got everything put back together. Saved y'all the boringness of watching me put this all back together, because it's all just bolts. You know, put the AC compressor, and some of y'all might not have AC, so don't apply to everything. But the gauge itself, as far as hooked up, this is taken care of. It's real simple, easy. Put the adapter in, you know. Like I was saying, you put it in, now it works. I Teflon tape both of my fittings. You don't really have to Teflon tape this one, but I do it just for extra security. You know, that's just me. I have it all routed, nice and neat, tucked away. You can't see anything. You know, you can see where it goes to the firewall back there, but other than that, you can't really see anything. So everything blends in nice, like I like it. We have no leaks. This new thermostat housing fit great, no problems. I didn't worry about painting it just because, you know, I figured the alternator's aluminum, air cleaner's aluminum, AC compressor's aluminum. You know, this fits right in home. So, but no leaks. On these 4302s, Windsors, and 289s, you always tell they get water built up down there if they're leaking. It's dry as a bone down there. It's dry up here by the fitting. If we come around here to the oil pressure gauge, get in here, you can see right down there, it's nice and dry, no leaks, looks good. And I got it routed, and that hose is doing its job of protecting it now. And I just have it routed along the valve cover and coming back and going right in the firewall there. So, but it's dry, no leaks, everything's good. And that piece fit like it's supposed to, that hex head piece that I took out to replace with the original where the sending unit goes. It fits perfect. Now, note, one thing is, because it's longer, it did interfere with the power steering pump a little bit. So if you notice, I had to angle it back just a touch more further than I actually anticipated or that it's supposed to be. But other than that, I mean, it's good to go other than that. Okay, so like I said, I went ahead and ran everything to check for leaks. So I'm going to show you, we're going to start the truck up, and I'm going to show you that everything now works like it's supposed to. So as you can see, the volts come running up around about 14 and a half volts, so that's good. About 50 pounds of pressure on the oil pressure. And temperature, it ain't fully, I didn't run it till it fully warmed up, but I ran it long enough just to check for leaks. But it's coming on up, so we're good to go there. And the factory gauges still work. You see the temperature, it's working. Alternator gauge is still working, and oil pressure gauge is still working. So there we go. And also, just to show you, there's the lights. I may get some green filters to put in here to make them match the dash lights, but it matches this, so everything's fine. It all blends in together, so that's good to go. I'm happy with that. Okay, so I just want to take you underneath the dash and just show you how it looks actually looking underneath the dash. You can see how I got the oil pressure line, ran up and go through the firewall there, along with the temperature sensor unit. Same thing, goes up the firewall there, no problem. And I got my wires connected, and so I got to run the wires like tied together, tucked up nice and neat. And this is what I like. I don't like wires hanging and everything being all like spaghetti. I want to come under here and be able to see what I'm looking at, and I know what each wire is for, and it's all nice and neat, and that's the way I like it. Got it routed up underneath, or up over, the steering support column brace, and over there to the plug. Now what I ended up doing is I made me this plug here that you see. You got those 3 prongs right here. I made that plugs. I got 3 prongs or 3 wires that go into one spade connector that plugs into a factory plug right here, and it comes off. It just branches off, and that's why I can plug several things in here. I'm gonna put an inline fuse in with anything. Like this wire's got an inline fuse already. This one don't because it's the voltmeter, but I'm gonna put an inline fuse for anything else that I run here. Don't really need an inline fuse on the voltmeter, and this wire is a factory wire, so it's tied into the fuse box anyway, which means it's got a fuse already. So if something was to happen, that fuse in the fuse box over here will blow. So it's still protected, But with the voltmeter, you don't really need a fuse anyway. So, because the voltmeter is just reading what is actually being put out. So there's not really much the voltmeter can do to cause it to blow a fuse. But like I said, the CB radio, that's what this is. And this switches so it turns on with the key on the on position only, not accessory. So this has a fuse. Anything I put in here will have a fuse. This don't need a fuse. And like I said, the factory line has a fuse. But I just want to show you a quick look underneath the dash and show you how everything actually turned out. Alrighty guys, well that's it, we're done. I am happy with the way this thing turned out. It turned out great. I worked on this thing for about 2 days getting these gauges done right. And now let me state that I did that as preference because I didn't want to rush anything. I wanted it done right. So I took my time. It took me a while to figure out how I wanted to route the oil pressure line, how I wanted to route the water temperature sensor line. It took me a while to get all the wires tidied up, put together, and ran up in the dash, and just to my liking, right? I didn't want to just throw the things in here. And I wanted to get it put in here right, and make it look neat. So it took me a couple of days, especially having to take the thermostat off. You got to drain the coolant, you got to replace it, you got to fill it back up with coolant. You got to take the power steering pump off to get the oil pressure line and that adapter fitting and all. So it takes a while to do this properly, But, it's worth it in the end because I'll never touch it again. It's worth the work because I'm never going to take the gauges back out. The gauges are in here. I did it because I just like them, and I can actually get true readings instead of just normal. So, and they're going to be in here for as long as I have the truck, and I don't intend on getting rid of it. So, yeah, it's worth the work, and it's that satisfactory, you know what I mean? The satisfactory of knowing that you got it the way you want it. So, but I'm happy to have this done. If y'all like the video, give me a thumbs up. I'd appreciate it. If you're not subscribed, consider subscribing. I'd appreciate that as well. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them in the drop box down below, and I'll get back to you. And that's all there is for this one. So until next time, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.